Well, I was saying that I have related some experiences yesterday which revealed to me the extent of my master's work and the scope of it. They revealed to me very clearly that he was working on the subhuman, human, and superhuman levels. And today I shall relate some experiences which showed to me that his work was not limited by space and time too. In the Indian tradition, we recognize there are three types of gurus. One is supposed to be like the hen, the other like the fish, and the third like the tortoise. The hen type needs physical contact for its initiations, for whatever the guru can convey to the disciple. So, on the scale of gurus, they are at the lowest level. The second level, that is the fish, needs visual contact. That is, at least they should live together in one ashram, things like that. Because the hen needs to sit on its egg to hatch out the chicken. And the fish is supposed, in our tradition, to lay the egg in the water and then swim around it, keeping eye contact only. The highest type is supposed to be like the tortoise. The tortoise is supposed to lay its eggs on the sands of the river bank, cover them over with sand, and go away into the water and keep mental contact. So, in the case of such gurus who are supposed to be the highest, neither physical contact nor visual contact is necessary. So, this was revealed to me by my master. And the very first time I met him, I was surprised that there was no touching or laying on of hands as is traditionally done. You know, under most systems, the guru lays his hands on the disciple's head or something like this. He only asked me to sit, and we were quite far, about 3 meters from each other. And I could not understand how this could be possible. Then he explained to me that in the Sahaj Marg system, no contact at all is necessary. Now in India we have some very old abhyasis who started very early, that is in the 50s, 5, 56, those years, you see. And it is worth reciting those stories so that you will get some idea of what I mean. In 1955, Dr. Vardachari received a copy of Reality at Dawn to be reviewed for the press. He was the official reviewer for the newspaper called The Hindu of Madras. His review was published, and 3 people read it in that paper. Two of them wrote to the master and asked him how they could start the meditation. One went to Shahjahanpur and was formally introduced by Babuji. The other man did not go to Shahjahanpur because he received a reply from master telling him that he should inform Babuji as to when he wanted to sit and at what time, and then Babuji would transmit to him at that time. This man thought, if he is such a great master as the book claims to be, why should I have to write to him and give him the date and time? So he decided to sit on a day and time of his own choice, and being a very orthodox Brahmin from South India, he consulted the almanac and fixed a date and time. On that particular day, at that particular time, he sat in meditation. He himself related this story to me, that when he sat in meditation, he felt as if some molten steel was being poured into his heart. What amazed him was that without being informed, yet the master was able to do the transmission at the time when he sat almost 3,500 kilometers away from Babuji. On one occasion, I asked Babuji how he did this. He said it is child's play. I just made a thought that on the day and time when he sits, my transmission should flow to him. That was all, you see. So these 2 persons were one of the first 2 persons in South India to join the mission. And one of them had this unique experience. So master could not only work over long distances, knowing when and where we are sitting, but he could also transmit in such a way that it would reach at any time we sat. No, this is a very important thing in Sahaj Marg, because it is as if, we have these modern conveniences. You can lie down in bed and then switch off the lights. To the people of today's generation, this may not appear very surprising or modern. But all of us who are here above 50 years old will remember a time when we had to switch off the light and then wander into bed, stumbling against things in the darkness. In a sense, the illumination was available only for a specified time. And subsequent to switching off, we had to blunder about in the darkness. I would suggest that that was what happened in the past in spirituality also. Because for one thing, we had to be in physical contact. And the master's power, such as it was, could work only when the physical contact was maintained. Or with the higher type, we had to be at least where he could see us. And if we went out of his sight, it was out of mind, as the old saying goes, you see, out of sight, out of mind. It doesn't mean out of mind in the sense of mental illness. It means you go out of his mind, out of his thoughts. Here, our master could do without our being in his presence, without touching us, wherever we should be. But even that was not so wonderful. The superb feature was, and is, that it was as if he gave the control switch in our hands. So that whenever any one of us sat anywhere in the world, we received the transmission. That was the most remarkable feature of Sahaj Marg. And the second instance which I told you of the man in South India who sat without informing master, it revealed precisely this very important fact. In the years before 1945, when Babuji started his work, this feature was unknown, could not even be imagined that such a thing could exist. Even till 1955-56, I think few people would have experienced this sort of experience. Because for one thing, as we all know from Lalaji's book, and from some of his letters to Master, and from Master's autobiography, Lalaji had not many disciples. I don't think there could have been more than 100 or so. And they were all in a small district, Farrukhabad district, where Lalaji himself lived in Fatehgarh. This is my assumption. Perhaps there were 200 or 300, I don't know, but still it was a very small number. And restricted to a very small geographical area in Uttar Pradesh. Then after Lalaji Maharaj passed away, till Babuji declared himself as the representative in 1945, there was a gap of something like 13 years. And going by what Babuji has written, and by studying the declaration that was read out in Fatehgarh, when he announced himself or proclaimed himself to be Lalaji's spiritual representative, it would appear that there was no spiritual work of any sort going on at that time, except that the few Abhyasis that Lalaji left behind continued their own practice. And as Babuji himself told me, there were very few preceptors in Lalaji's times, perhaps not even a dozen. And a very significant fact is that Babuji himself was not a preceptor during Lalaji's lifetime. He was never a preceptor. But nevertheless, see, after he started work in 45 under Lalaji's orders, he started transmitting to the south of India. Because that was Lalaji's instructions, start your work from the south. And of course, he had to travel once physically. And that brings me to how he prepared the field, as he called it. He told me that when he arrived in Madras, he put his luggage in the cloakroom and took a horse-drawn coach and went round Madras. He had no friends, no contacts, nothing. He did not know any language. All that he did was to take a horse cart and go round once, come back to the station in the evening and take the train to the next city. Like this, he finished Madras, Madurai, Trivandrum, and some other cities in the south. So I asked him, what exactly did you do? He said, well, I only prayed to my master and transmitted to the atmosphere in those places, making the thought that the transmission would reach people who are fit to receive it and that they should come to me for assistance, spiritual guidance. So this was the way he prepared the field. And I remember that he started his work maybe in 1945, like this in the south. And it took 11 or 12 years for the first disciples to come from the south. So I asked Babuji once, if I till a field and sow some seeds of rice or wheat, you can get a crop out in a few months. Why did it take you 12 years and 15 years for your work to start? He said it is the resistance in human nature that makes this work difficult. All other things in nature have a specified time. But human beings have no time. In the sense that each one develops according to his own willfulness, his craziness, his intelligence, in whichever way it operates. So, the first visit to the south, Master went physically. Then it appears he did not go out anywhere for a few years. So when I asked him, why didn't you go again and again? He said, well, you know, that experience taught me how to do it sitting here in Shahjahanpur. So I asked him how he did it. All he did was to take a map, look at a particular state of India, hold it in his mind and transmit. I want to tell you an experience in this connection which I personally had. It was on my first visit to Europe with Babuji Maharaj in 1972. We were traveling from one place to another by air. And he just looked at me and said, prepare such and such a country where we are going now. So I asked him how to do it. He said, oh, you have forgotten already. I have told you before. So I had to just, think, but I couldn't find the answer. So I said, Babuji, I'm sorry, I can't remember it. So he looked at me and said, Parthasarathi, you must always remember what I say. Because I myself forget sometimes what I have said. You see, that was another way of his teaching, that he was never critical. He was always prepared to take the blame upon himself in a very humorous way for our failings. Then he told me how to do it. I started the work. After half an hour, he looked at me and said, your work is not reaching this particular part of the country. For a moment, I was irritated. Because I thought, in the rational way, I am doing the work. What does he know about it? But when I examined, I found he was correct. It seemed as if the rest of the country was green. This part was still yellow or something. So then I completed the work and asked him, Babuji, when you can do this work yourself in 2 or 3 minutes, and you can see what I am doing better than I can see it myself, why don't you do it yourself? Why did you give me this work? He said there are 2 very simple reasons for it. One thing is I want to teach you how to do it, and you see how well you have learnt it. The second thing is if you do the lower work, I am free to do the higher work. So you see what he had to undertake difficulties to learn himself, he could teach us so easily. Within half an hour, I could pick up the work he had taken probably 20 years to learn from Lalaji. And not only was it now something I heard about, spoke about, that he could transcend time and space, he gave me the personal experience that I could also do it. So that was a very revealing experience to me, and of course a wonderful experience that Master had so much confidence in me to permit me even to do such a small piece of work for him. But even more revealing experience was to follow at the end of that tour in 1972. We were going back home after finishing with Italy, and I think we were going from Rome to Beirut, and on the way he was very absorbed, and he was like that for about 2 hours. When he relaxed and did like this as he always used to do, I asked him, why were you so absorbed? What were you doing? So first he teased me as he always used to, saying, oh, why should I tell you everything that I do? I said, well, it is your business, but if you want to tell me, I am willing to hear. Then he asked me, how much will you give me if I tell you what I did? So I said, you once told me that your work is priceless. What can I do give you that will pay for it? So after a few minutes of joking like this, he looked at me very gravely and said, I had some spare time on my hands and I should not remain idle. So I thought I should do some work. Then he suddenly looked at me and said, you are a preceptor. You examine and tell me what I was doing. No, you see, he had finished the work, and how am I to examine something he has already finished? See, it's like somebody baking a cake and putting it on the dining table. And when you ask her how did she bake it, she says, watch me doing it and tell me. How can you watch something in the past? So I was a bit confused. I said, Babuji, your work is over. How can I watch it now? He said, it's very easy. Just think over it, how I did it. So I just meditated for a few minutes. And suddenly the idea came that he was working in the future. So I told him, Babuji, I think you are working in the future. He was so pleased to hear this answer. I don't know why. And he congratulated me. I said, Babuji, it is nothing. What have I said that's so wonderful? He said, few persons can understand whether I am working in the past or the present or the future. And I am happy that by Lalaji's grace, you have been able to do it. He said, now tell me how much in the future. So I saw that I had got myself into big trouble. Anyway, the Master cannot be disobeyed, so I sat in meditation again. And it appeared to me that he was working very far in the future, maybe 100,000 years, something like that, you see. So I told him, Babuji, it seems quite far in the future, maybe 50,000 years, maybe 1 lakh years. We say 1 lakh for 100,000 in India. See. So he just hugged me like that and said, wonderful work you are doing today. Then he put on one of his mischievous smiles. He put on one of his mischievous smiles and asked me, shall I tell you what I was really doing? I said, of course, I am waiting to hear it. He said, I was idle as I told you, and the thought came to me that when the time for Mahapralaya comes, a personality will have to come to do the dissolution of the universe. No, that is not very difficult work. But I thought the poor fellow may have some problems. So I laid the foundation for his work. Now imagine, according to our tradition in India, this present age, which we call the Kali Yuga, is supposed to last something like 43.2 million years. And tradition says only 5,000 years of that has gone. Only 5,000. So all the 43 million years are still to go. And here was my master laying the foundation for that work at that time. So can you imagine what his work was? So when we say that it had no limitations of space and time, it was a literal fact. Not only could he transmit anywhere into the universe physically, but he could transmit into any time, past, present or future. Once he told me that I can transmit to the other end of the universe if I choose. Now I was used to the conventional idea, you see, that time is the fastest thing.
Sure.
Not time, light is the fastest in the world. And even light takes 9 minutes to reach the sun or from the sun to us. And the science tells us that the nearest star, the light from that star takes 4.5 years to come to us. I asked Babuji, I don't doubt that you can transmit to the other end of the universe, but when will it reach there? He said, what is this question you are asking? I don't understand it. So very patiently I explained to him the fundamental facts of science, that a letter takes 2 days to reach from Madras to Shahjahanpur. Starting from that, to Einstein's limitation of the velocity of light as a permanent limit. So he looked at me, put on his glasses and said, is that so? I said, yes, that is what science says. You see. And therefore I asked you when your transmission will reach the other end of the universe. Then he told me, science is not the only thing in this world and only a foolish person should depend on science. I was quite shocked because, I am also a bit westernized. And my faith in science was almost a religion for me. So I said, Babuji, how can you say that? He said, I can say it because it is true. Very simple. You see, he needed no authority like we need, that Einstein said this or Ptolemy said this. He did not have to say anything. He said, it is true, therefore I can say it. Then I said, okay, but how can it possibly reach? Then he told me, it is the power of thought. You can be wherever you want to be in the very instant that you think of it. Then he asked me one question. When I transmit to you from here to Madras, how long does it take? I said, I never thought of it. And really it is so because having been used to this idea of the velocity of time. And really speaking, it cannot take much time, a fraction of a second. I said, so I never thought of it in that way, you see, that it can take some time. Then he said, look here, that was the truth. I said, what was the truth? He said, your mind told you not to think about it. So why do you think about it now? And that was one of his great teachings, you see, that we should not think about things which we should not think about. Because most of our problems come from unnecessary thinking about all sorts of funny things in this world. What he really meant was, stick to your business, don't worry about other things. So you see, these 3 or 4 examples I gave you were very revealing, that here was my master with such fantastic abilities. I am deliberately not using the word power. It was a capacity which he inherited from his master. That sitting in a tiny place in India, unknown place, he could attempt the extraordinary work by his transmission, changing the universe even. So that was the extent and the scope of my master's work. And the brilliance of this work was not that he alone could do it. He has made so many of us who can do it too. And even the preceptors don't have much limitation on their work. And such limitations as exist are put by him. So these are the things which I would like you all to understand about master's work. It is important to preserve all these stories and this knowledge as a tradition which we have to pass on into the future. Because even though people will always be there to do this work, yet the tradition becomes part of the work. And these are so beautiful and so human ways of teaching us. And at the same time so simple, that he could teach us not through textbooks or any ritualistic training or teaching, but by giving instruction in a few words and making us do it ourselves. And then I could really accept what he always used to say, it is so simple. So only one who does the work can see whether it is difficult or not. And whenever preceptors felt any problem in their work, he always used to say, do it and find out. And that was his most important teaching, that work teaches. All the other teaching is useless and irrelevant. Thank you.